Welcome to Reading the Gospels Together, and today we're reading part 2 of John chapter 10, and that means it's Hanukkah, or as it is also known, the Feast of Dedication. Now, I'm writing this after having scraped snow off my car, so I'm interested to see that it's winter in our reading as well. It does snow, by the way, occasionally in Jerusalem, which is actually about 3/4 of a kilometer above sea level in the Judean mountains, so it can be quite cold in the winter. Hanukkah, as in our reading today, is a winter celebration. I'd like to tell you a bit about Hanukkah now. First, a bit of history. Israel had been conquered in the 300s BC by Alexander the Great. And after his death, Israel was under the control of a Greek administration called the Seleucids. Now, one of the Seleucid rulers, Antiochus Epiphanes, wanted to force Greek religion and culture upon the Jewish people, outlawing much of Jewish religious practice and even desecrating the temple by sacrificing a pig on the altar. Now, these desecrations so enraged the population that a rebellion was mounted by a group known as the Maccabees. They managed to overthrow the Seleucids in about 160 AD, and they regained control of the temple. But before the ceremonial work of the temple could be resumed, it needed to be cleansed of the desecrations which had happened there, and that cleansing involved the relighting of the great menorah, that 7-branched candelabra. Now, only one small jar of religiously pure oil was found, enough for only a single night of lighting, but miraculously the oil lasted 8 days, by which time more pure oil was able to be obtained and temple worship was able to continue unabated. So Hanukkah celebrates not only the military victory of freedom from the Seleucids and from the oppression against their religion, but also the miraculous menorah light and the resumption of true worship. In Israel to this day, despite the temple having been destroyed back in 70 AD, Hanukkah is still celebrated with the lighting of a great Hanukkah, a giant candelabra with 8 branches. Don't call it a Hanukkah menorah, it's a Hanukkah. And those 8 branches match the 8 days of the original miracle. Every Jewish home has a Hanukkah which they light night by night, 1 candle on the first night, 2 candles on the second, and so on. Now, I've been in Jerusalem during Hanukkah and walking the streets at night, all lit by golden candles. It's just absolutely amazing. And Jews around the world do the same to this very day. Now, this year, Hanukkah starts on the evening of December the 10th. Sometimes Hanukkah and Christmas happen to be around the same time. Hanukkah changes a little bit every year because it's on the basis of a lunar rather than a solar calendar. Now, in memory of my family's many times in Israel, we have a Hanukkah which we light in our home during Hanukkah. It's also traditional during Hanukkah to eat foods cooked in oil, the most popular being potato pancakes called latkes. And some of my happiest meal memories as a child were of those potato pancakes. Another traditional food is sufganiot, a kind of a jelly donut. So you'll be looking for me eating a jelly donut in my once-a-year only jelly donut days in Hanukkah. So that's Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, for which Jesus traveled to Jerusalem that winter of long ago. And in the verses that follow, John summarizes the position that Jesus finds himself in over those last 4 or 5 chapters in the Gospel of John, position with both the people and with his opponents. So, we're told that it's winter, it's Hanukkah. Jesus is in the temple area in Jerusalem walking in Solomon's colonnade, which is kind of a roofed area on the south end of the Temple Mount, not in the temple itself, but on that big platform upon which the temple was built. And it was a roofed area which provided some shelter from the elements in the winter cold. Many rabbis would conduct lessons in this area, and Jesus was doing the same. The people are demanding clarity. Will Jesus openly and clearly declare himself to be the Messiah? And if he does so, it will give cause both for people to follow him, which is a good thing, but also to arrest him on religious grounds for blasphemy and political grounds for treason, which is a bad thing. So Jesus, at this point, because it's not yet time, is not speaking openly about it. He does say, however, that, look, he says, I've told you, but you didn't believe me. You fail to really listen to me and to follow my voice as sheep follows the shepherd's voice. You've heard the psalm, "The Lord's my shepherd," Jesus effectively says. Well, that's me. And then he drops the bombshell. I and the Father are one. Well, there's the blasphemy charge, and they're about to stone Jesus for it. But he challenges them. He says, "Which of the miracles I performed are you stoning me for?" "Well, it's for calling yourself God," they respond. Jesus then quotes Psalm 82:6, which says, "I said, you are gods, you are all sons of the Most High." So what's the problem, Jesus says? I'm just quoting a psalm. Oh, there's several layers to this response. You see, Jesus quotes this verse to sting. Psalm 82 is a sarcastic indictment of those political and religious rulers of the land who may well consider themselves gods, but who are failing the people. Listen to what Psalm 82 actually says. God presides in the great assembly of the rulers. He renders judgment among the so-called gods. So it's kind of like saying God is looking over what's happening in the House of Parliament or the House of Congress or the Senate or the White House or any of those numbers of things. And he renders judgment among the so-called gods, those politicians who consider themselves to be above everybody else. And God says this to them: "How long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the weak and fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked." But these so-called gods know nothing. They understand nothing. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, "Oh, you are gods. You're all sons of the Most High, but you will die like mere mortals. You will fall like every other ruler." Well, the fellows that Jesus said this to would have picked right up on this scathing critique of their rule. Jesus is basically telling them that their leadership and their ability to judge him is invalidated due to their failure to provide justice and peace and resources for the poor. Of course, this enrages them all the more, and they would have done Jesus in there and then. But once again, we read, he escaped from their grasp. But Jesus doesn't return to Galilee. Rather, he returns to the old baptismal site across the Jordan from Jericho. Why there? Well, for one thing, it's outside the jurisdiction of the temple officials. So Jesus was safe from them there. They couldn't put a hand on him. For another thing, it gave all those who had followed John the Baptist an opportunity to come there and to meet with Jesus. And we are told many believed. Now, before we close and get into chapter 11, one takeaway from this passage, which is particularly relevant to our current days of political upheaval and unhappiness and strife, is just what expectations God has for good government. They're in the passage which Jesus alluded to, Psalm 82. Listen to these verses again when you're wondering what God considers good government to be. "How long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the weak and fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked." May our political processes and our participation in them lead us to a government which reflects the spirit of Psalm 82. Meanwhile, we'll see you next time for one of Jesus' most famous miracles, the raising of Lazarus in John chapter 11. I'm looking forward to that.